All right, I think we're live. Push 1 in the chat room if you can hear me. Maybe people can't hear me. All right, got a confirmation. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 797, Black Politics. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust. Also, there will be a document in the description beneath the video for you to follow along with and reference. If you want to engage in the discussion, there'll be a link in the chat. Make sure you update your Zoom client before joining. Let me drop the link in the chat so people can join if they want. Just give me a second. All right, let me share my screen because before we get into this, we want to talk about Roy Smith, a Black conservative who does not believe in reparations. So let's get started with that first and foremost. Right? Second. All right, this is from Valuetainment. Yeah, that's what we're talking about, Spawn. Hey, Peace Fronin and Peace Complex. Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We got to dismantle this, these ideas that are being pushed out here by these Black conservatives. So let's go. Let's see if anybody's trying to join first. Nope, let's go.
Some cities push $1 million payments to Black Americans are civic obligation. And so the battle of reparations intensifying in the United States. This is a Fox News story with discussions at the local, state, and federal levels considering $1 million payments to Black Americans. Representative Cori Bush and progressive lawmakers have introduced a reparations now resolution calling for $14 billion in reparations, citing a moral and legal obligation to address the impact of slavery on Black lives. Reparations initiatives have emerged at the municipal and state levels with proposals for direct payments and assistance programs. The California Reparations Task Force recommended $1.2 million payment to eligible Black residents, while Evanston, Illinois approved a plan to provide $25,000 for home repairs or down payments to qualified Black residents. Critics argue that reparations should not be pursued and that they divert attention from addressing critical issues in black communities. What are your thoughts on this?
Look, there's a lot of thoughts. Number one, no greater than Bayard Rustin, who is a legendary icon of the civil rights movement. He's one of the ones that co-founded, that co-organized the March on Washington. And this is Bayard Rustin said this in the 60s. And he said that his father was not a slave, nor was his grandfather, something like that. So he, in his mind, reparations was a silly conversation, that we need to move forward from that. And so, look, you have to understand that this is how the left, this is what the left does, and this is what Democrats do when they're trying to appeal to black Americans. They have nothing substantial to offer black Americans in terms of policies. They know that their policies are actually detrimental to the lives of African Americans. So what do? Every election year it comes up, here's the handout, here's some reparations, here's this, here's that. I don't know how long people are going to fall for it. Look, when I came out as conservative 5 years ago, and, you know, like, you saw the Vice video and all that stuff, and I was like, you know, right, like, you know, black people, like, we got to wake up, all that other stuff. 5 years later, I do not know, because they somehow continue to keep falling for this, right? And if they continue to keep falling for this stuff, the Democrats are going to continue to keep pushing it. And one more point that I'll make about quote unquote reparations is that we have seen billions of dollars that the federal government has given in terms of programs to help advance African Americans, in terms of welfare stuff, in terms of all of this other stuff. And what has that really done? All right, like, it hasn't really done a whole hell of a lot to benefit, you know, lower income black communities across the country. And the issue that these communities face is, again, not a political issue. It is a cultural issue. The great Alan West, I was watching one of his videos from my Facebook page yesterday, and he made this, he basically was debating with this college leftist, and he basically said the fundamental problems in the African American community are not going to be solved by the government. They're going to be solved by the family structure. Why are there no men in the house? Where are the family structure? And the federal government has de-incentivized fathers in the household for the better part of the past 40, 50, 60 years. Until you fix that, all of these problems are never going to get fixed. But Democrats don't want to fix the problem. They want to pretend that they fix the problems, and they want to basically buy black votes. It pisses me off.
You know what? I'm going to follow that up with some facts here. And also, we need to look no further than our vice president, who was a proponent of the California 3 strikes laws. And it was 3 strikes, and then you spend your life in prison. So if your third conviction, your life in prison. But drug distribution convictions counted as a full strike. So an 18-year-old individual sells 2 ounces of marijuana before it's legal. That's a strike. And it was Kamala Harris that pushed that in California, and it disproportionately, imprisoned for those relatively minor drug distribution offenses. I'm not talking about fentanyl. I'm talking about pot. I'm talking about marijuana, grass. And she put an enormous amount of men of color in the California state prisons.
Yeah, Kamala the cop.
That's it.
You ever see those memes? It was like Kamala Harris and the Kamala the cop.
Yep.
Well, let me ask you.
Yes, Seeking My Creator, Spawn the Programmer. You heard right. Black conservative. Okay? That's what goes on in the manosphere. That's what goes on across this country. Black male conservatives. Why do you think we've been railing on black male conservatives? Okay? Manosphere conservatives. These are the sort of talking points that's coming out of their mouths. You want to know why you ain't got reparations? Not because of Democrats, not because of the left. It's because of guys like him, okay? You got to deal with guys like him. And guys don't want to talk about it. Just the other day, on Bernard Riley, they were talking about people coming across the border, illegal immigrants. We got to worry about them. Don't talk about reparations. There you go. Why you don't have it? There you go. Right straight from his mouth. Straight from the horse's mouth.
I feel like you're a good person to ask about this.
I'm actually here representing all black people.
Of course, that's why I'm using you as your representative. That's exactly why I'm asking this question.
I'll be over here.
They're talking about $14 trillion in reparations. Okay, what's our GDP? 22 trillion. So we're talking almost 2/3 of our U.S. economy, GDP, going towards reparations.
Yeah, and also, dummies, where is the money coming from?
I want to go math here. I'm not trying to go, identity politics. I'm not trying to call anybody names here. I want to understand, where's this money actually coming from? You see California, in San Francisco, didn't Dodgers go there recently? They're talking about giving people $5 million checks. How is this being funded?
Fundamentally, it's they want it to come from the tax dollars. And here's the thing: like, if you
we got a fucking debt ceiling. We can barely pay our own freaking bills.
but the states
for
can't do
$31
it.
trillion in debt. Where is this
Stop
money
thinking
coming
so
from?
small, Ed.
yeah. So I want you to understand. I want you to understand.
Just a small thinker over here, just trying to come up with some trillions.
I want you to understand the reasoning behind what they do it, and how this also ties into sort of the anti-capitalism, anti-millionaire, billionaire rhetoric that they also try to push to leftists. Okay, so on one hand, they're going to say you are entitled to reparations because you're so black and you're so oppressed, and the legacy of slavery and the trauma and all of that other stuff, and you're entitled to this money. You are not meant to think where the money is supposed to come from. Okay, it's obviously going to come from taxpayer dollars. It's obviously going to come from the federal government, right? But if you have a group of people that are so anti-capitalist, anti-millionaire, anti-billionaire, whatever, they're never really good. They're not thinking about tax. My ex-best friend was a total Bernie Sanders leftist. He was perfectly thrilled to just take taxpayer money. These are not the people that are going to be paying for that stuff, right? And so fundamentally, if you get these people to hate capitalism, hate millionaires, hate billionaires, and then say there's all this free money that's going to be coming to you because you're such a victim and vote for us and we'll do it, of course it's going to be tax dollars. But they're not thinking about the fact that this is literally their own money that they're going to be getting back.
I think they have to be very careful with this because do you know, when you look at numbers like this, do you know who the first slave owner was in America? Do you know the first ever slave owner in America? Do you actually know this?
It was a black man.
It was a black man. Wow. It was Anthony Johnson. Okay, if you just type in first Anthony Johnson was the first slave owner in America. So this is kind of a, when you go through the stats and you go through stories and you go through what happened and you go through the moment with Don Lemon that he brought that one lady on and he's asking about what do you think about reparations? Yeah, we should go back to the Africans who were the original slave owners.
The British lady.
Yeah, we really need to look into this. We really need to look into this. When you do things like this, it's a travesty what happened in slavery. Listen, man, I'm Armenian genocide. I'm half Assyrian genocide, Greeks, what the Turks did to them. It's catastrophic. It's terrible what happened to those folks. Terrible what happened to
the Holocaust.
Yes. Nobody's sitting here saying any of that stuff, but I think the way this is going about is another thing to run for election, and I think it may get a lot of people's attention to say, can we win some more African-American votes? But what you pointed out earlier is the gay vote, you were saying 70%, 30% voted for Trump in 2016 or 2020?
It was, I think those numbers came out in 2020.
2020.
Yeah.
When you think about that, and then the African-American vote, for the longest time, Democrats have had.
Here we go. Everybody wants to say, oh, the left and the LGBTQ. What was that? 1/3 of, rainbow colored Ligibbets like you hear in the manosphere. Yeah, they voted for Trump. Okay. They voted for Trump. So for all the nonsense about being conservative and all these other things, then you go right there.
92% of the votes since 1964, and it's gone to 88%, 84%. So it's kind of going in a different direction to say, look, I don't know what the Democrats have done for me. Nothing's really changed in my life when I look back. You just make the top 30 cities in crime in America, 27 are driven by Democrats. So this NAACP is sitting there saying, hey, you should not go to Florida. Great. That's great. Why don't you talk? So you want people to go to the top 30 cities where 27 are Democrats and they're not safe? They can say these things, but the opposition argument's going to be very easy to come back to this. So if you like this clip and you want to watch, recommended $1.2 million payment.
All right, because I know that some people are just coming in. And the link is in the chat if you want to join and you want to debate this point, because what you're seeing in real time is why we don't trust Black conservatives, man. Okay? We've been saying this for months. We've been saying this since 2020. You cannot trust Black male conservatives because they will undermine every opportunity for progress. Okay? You cannot trust Black male conservatives, but manosphere conservatives. All of these talking points, you hear it in the manosphere. Every single opportunity. We just had somebody talking about illegal immigrants at the border last week, okay? Bernard Riley's. all of it is nothing more than deflection. It's smoke and mirrors, and it's meant to undermine any sort of progress that Black people can have. So when you want to talk about reparations, it's the left, no, Jim Clyburn, is he about reparations? No, you need to be looking at guys like you saw on the screen, Patrick David, okay? These are the folks stopping you from getting to your reparations. So don't come over here talking about, the left, liberals. Congressional Black Caucus. Reparations as the HR 40 came from Congressional Black Caucus. So what are we talking about here? Okay. Everybody always wants to blame the left. Everybody always wants to blame Democrats. They always want to blame the Congressional Black Caucus. They always want to blame Black politicians, but it's really these Black male conservatives who go on these platforms helping to undermine the state of progress for Black people collectively. What's going on, MOT?
Yeah, what's going on, man? And you have to realize that what they have to do is extremely easy and extremely simple, because they know most of these people don't want to be responsible for the current state of condition. So if they keep acting like there is something that's going to be happening or had on the other side, then that's just where they're going to stay. They just want the action to happen. They don't want to be involved in the process. They don't want to be invested in the process. They don't want to actually know what's going on. They don't even care. They just want it done, and they know the only way that they can get leverage is from people on the left, because they know they don't get anything out of people on the right. And like Patrick Bet David came from a messed up country and messed up circumstances where he couldn't participate. Now he's here undermining the very type of people, the circumstances that he was in before he even got here. Like, it's so easy to run this type of short con on people with these confident man techniques. It's too easy because it's pre-printed within the DNA of America. It's just that these conservatives, who are not American citizens, by the way, they don't even believe in the Constitution, not the equal protection under all portion of it. They've never believed in those things. If you look throughout history, it's the same people from the same areas of the country doing the same exact things. Historically, that's bad. But they protect themselves from actually knowing what's going on by deliberately not learning the history. They're kind of like the Viet Cong, who actually pushed their children out into the streets in front of these convoys of tanks, knowing that the tanks wasn't going to stop. These are the people who keep trying to create all these child soldiers rather than learn the information and be able to move accordingly. It's a very easy way out of it, but actually preserving stagnation is their actual goal.
Yeah, let me play the clip again, because a lot of people are asking, some people are asking about, run it back. So just so you can be clear on this, Black male conservative goes on PBD's podcast and says all of this, okay?
$1 payments to Black Americans are civic obligation. And so the battle over reparations intensifying in the United States. This is a Fox News story with discussions at the local, state, and federal levels considering $1 million payments to Black Americans. Representative Cori Bush and progressive lawmakers have introduced the Reparations Now resolution calling for $14 billion in reparations, citing a moral and legal obligation to address the impact of slavery on Black lives. Reparations initiatives have emerged at the municipal and state levels with proposals for direct payments and assistance programs. The California Reparations Task Force recommended $1.2 million payment to eligible Black residents, while Evanston, Illinois approved a plan to provide $25,000 for home repairs or down payments to qualified Black residents. Critics argue that reparations should not be pursued and that they divert attention from addressing critical issues in Black communities. What are your thoughts on this?
Look, there's a lot of thoughts. Number one, no greater than Bayard Rustin, who is a legendary icon of the civil rights movement. He's one of the ones that co-founded, that co-organized the March on Washington. And this is Bayard Rustin said this in the 60s. And he said that his father was not a slave, nor was his grandfather, something like that. So he, in his mind, reparations was a silly conversation, that we need to move forward from that. And so, look, you have to understand that this is how the left, this is what the left does does, and this is what Democrats do when they're trying to appeal to Black Americans, they have nothing substantial to offer Black Americans in terms of policies. They know that their policies are actually detrimental to the lives of African Americans. So what do? Every election year it comes up, here's the handout, here's some reparations, here's this, here's that. I don't know how long people are going to fall for it. Look, when I came out as conservative 5 years ago, and like you saw the Vice video and all that stuff, and I was like, right, like, Black people, like, we got to wake up, all that other stuff. 5 years later, I do not know, because they somehow continue to keep falling for this, right? And if they continue to keep falling for this stuff, the Democrats are going to continue to keep pushing it. And one more point that I'll make about quote unquote reparations is that we have seen billions of dollars that the federal government has given in terms of programs to help advance African Americans, in terms of welfare stuff, in terms of all of this other stuff. And what has that really done? All right. Like, it hasn't really done a whole hell of a lot to benefit, lower income Black communities across the country. And the issue that these communities face is, again, not a political issue. It is a cultural issue. The great Alan West, I was watching one of his videos.
It's not political. It's cultural. Culture warrior.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Complete culture warrior.
So what they do is they take the wrongdoing off of the government and they try to put it on Black culture. That is the actual problem. Like Thomas Sowell do this. Most actual Black conservatives actually do this. So what they do is they go in front of mostly white audiences where they don't get challenged, and they make these sort of points to other people. When it's just, like the Black conservative is it's like a short con operation that everybody should know about at this point. Like, it shouldn't even be under any type of question, because it's always viral whenever a Black man comes out. Oh, I'm coming out as conservative. It's kind of when the dude, modern Renaissance man, that guy came out as, oh, well, you know what? There's no such thing as CRT, and racism hasn't stopped me from doing anything. Like, they do that stuff in front of all white audiences because it's ahistorical of what the issue is. And it's like, yes, reparation wasn't an issue for that person in those circumstances, but do you dismiss the entire premise because it doesn't apply to one person? That's ridiculous. And it's like, you never see this for Jews when it comes to the Holocaust. You never see this with Native Americans when it comes to the Trail of Tears. You never see this with Armenians when it comes to the Armenian genocide. But you always see this stuff when it comes to Black people and reparations. It's shocking to me that people haven't picked up on this yet. And if they're not outwardly doing what this guy is doing, they run Republican interference outright by trying to pretend like they're in the middle and they're concern trolling the entire process. That's the other end of this actual short con operation, this actual concern trolling of everybody else's reparation efforts, but they don't even concentrate on the reparation efforts in their own state. It's always this look over here, look at what these people are doing. And people have been falling for it for way too long.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Let's finish hearing what he has to say.
Videos from my Facebook page yesterday, and he made this. He basically was debating with this college leftist, and he basically said the fundamental problems in the African American community are not going to be solved by the government. They're going to be solved by the family structure. Why are there no men in the house? Where are the family structure? And the federal government has de-incentivized fathers in the household for the better part of the past 40, 50, 60 years. Until you fix that, all of these problems are never going to get fixed. But Democrats don't want to fix the problem. They want to pretend that they fix the problems, and they want to basically buy Black votes. It pisses me off.
All right. So he admitted that there is a actual government policy in place that encourages this type of behavior. But did he actually lobby for getting rid of these actual policies so that way things can work right? No, because he's trying to actually have things work exactly the way it works so that way he can maintain his position. And this is just a guy on the right doing this. There are people on the left who do this too. Like I said, by running conservative interference or pretending like there's no historical relevance between the actual things that happened from back in the 1800s to now. People on the left do it too. But you have to know that you're being played for a fool by both of these people So that way you can understand. The only thing you have to do is learn the history, move to an area that works, leave these people out in the middle of nowhere, and pay attention to these actual grifters who actually show up under the guise of actually progress. This guy's a method actor. This guy is no different than any other method actor who get pigeonholed into a role. But if you don't know what these actual actors do and what their actual playbook is, you're gonna keep falling for this stuff. Because what he's trying to do is maintain your separation from the political process by giving you the idea of thinking that conservatism, or actually making money by being a conservative, because that's what this is about, is the actual way to bring forth the actual progress for everybody. But the only thing they want to do is switch it from the government and put it on Black culture. Black culture has to fix the actual issue. Not the government has to remove the laws and the cultural is a problem. But that's what these people do.
Off.
You know what? I'm going to follow that up with some facts here. And also, we need to look no further than our vice president, who was a proponent of the California 3 strikes laws. And it was 3 strikes and then you spend your life in prison. So if you're third.
See, this is the other gaslight, right? This idea, the 94 crime bill, 3 strikes, you're out, right? These guys don't realize that people like Newt Gingrich and the other conservatives wanted 1 strike. They didn't want 3 strikes. They wanted 1. And so
3 strikes was a compromise.
Yeah. And don't realize that Jimmy Carter is actually the last leftist liberal president that we had. Okay. After that, every other president, you had Reagan, you had Bush Sr., and then you had Clinton. 2 hard writers, conservatives, and then you had Clinton as a centrist, and then you had Bush Jr. as another
Southern conservative Democrat from Arkansas.
Yeah. And then you had Bush Jr. for 8 years with his conservative agenda, and then you got Obama. Okay. So for the last 30 years.
Himself, another centrist. So like what they think the left is actually centrism.
Yeah. Which brings in Donald Trump, because Donald Trump, prior to him running, was a Democrat. Okay.
New York
for all intents and purposes, in New York liberal, and was heavily involved with the Democratic Party. And so this idea that, 3 strikes, Kamala Harris, 3 strikes. Well, Newt Gingrich, scorched earth policy was all about 1 strike. Okay. But nobody wants to talk about that. Okay. Nobody wants to have that conversation. Everybody wants to have the conversation about what she did. And that's the reason why the thumbnail looks the way that it does. Someone in Art Newstall's chat late last night, was talking about Kamala Harris running for president. And he said, well, if Kamala was to run and become president, then I'll leave this country, right? Out of fear that this woman could be president. But this guy, the tangerine tyrant,
that she's even running. No indication that she's running. But they put out these red herrings and all these types of issues that are ahistorical, that are not based on anything that's in the news. And it's always some scaremongering, fear-mongering tactic, so that way they don't have to understand what's going on. The only thing you have to do is understand what's actually going on. You wouldn't have to say stupid shit like that. You just wouldn't have to.
Yeah. But, Tangerine Tyrant ran the country into the ground, and none of these guys have anything to say about it. Okay. You had Daniel Penny in New York choke a Black man on a train, choke him to death. And that doesn't tell you that you should leave the country, but Kamala Harris running the country, being the president somehow is indicative of you leaving the country. This makes no sense. And so this is what you get out of Black male conservatives. Disproportionately disliking Black women, always cowtailing to white male conservatives, like on you see this platform, and ahistorical as fuck. Completely ahistorical.
No pushback. They never go anywhere else to debate their points and conditions. They just hop on these extremely large platforms and they get all this following because they literally don't have to explain themselves to anybody. Like the right-wing media structure is a grift within itself. a self-enclosed bubble that empowers the
Mhm.
most mediocre people in the country for pushing a one-sided and actual agenda that's ahistorical.
Let's finish playing this.
Conviction in your life in prison, but drug distribution convictions counted as a full strike. So an 18-year-old individual sells 2 ounces of marijuana before it's legal. That's a strike. And it was Kamala Harris that pushed that in California, and it disproportionately, imprisoned for those relatively minor drug distribution offenses. I'm not talking about fentanyl. I'm talking about pot. I'm talking about marijuana, grass. And she put an enormous amount of men of color in the California state prisons.
Yeah, Kamala the cop.
Kamala, that's a,
You ever see those memes? It was like Kamala Harris and the Kamala the cop.
yep.
Well, let me ask you.
you know you're fucked up when you gotta refer to memes as a rational truth moment of truth by pulling up memes like that. That's their source.
But it's
no
easy.
sort of facts to be brought up. Yeah.
But it's easy, and it's easy, and it's bumper plate, and it's easy to actually regurgitate. Doesn't require anything. It's always some childish thing that they go to actually make a simplistic point. But the Schedule 1 issue has been a federal issue.
Since Nixon.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, and they're trying to make it look like, oh, if it wasn't for that damn Kamala boy, a lot of people would be walking around innocent. But it's like, bro, listen, Mississippi weighs marijuana like it's cocaine and give you time based off of the hardest scheduled drug. Not even that is marijuana, and give you time based off of that. I'm like, dude, there's a lot of places that's way worse than California when it comes to this. And the actual distribution part wasn't even true distribution. If it was more for you than to smoke in a joint, they charge you with distribution. That was just an automatic charge that came with it. It's kind of like an automatic mandatory minimum. But when you have people who don't know anything about the laws and they're looking for somebody to blame, rather than understanding the actual issue as it is, as it's unchanged on the books, this is why you keep having all these problems. But that's just me, man. It's crazy that people don't even understand the simplicities of what they're actually arguing against while arguing against it.
I feel like you're a good person to ask about this.
I'm actually here representing all black people.
Of course, that's why I'm using it.
Yeah, here comes the flat blackness, the new SBE, man. This is what it's about. That's why I titled it the way it is.
As your representative. That's exactly why I'm asking this question.
I'll be over
they're
here.
talking about $14 trillion in reparations. Okay, what's our GDP? 22 trillion. So we're talking almost 2/3 of our U.S. economy GDP going towards reparations.
Yeah, and also dummies, where is the money coming from?
I want to go math here. I'm not trying to go, identity politics.
Here's a better argument. Trump gave the airline industry and the pharmaceutical industry $3 trillion. Okay. He gave them $3 trillion. And the military industrial complex, Lockheed, Boeing, all of them got a cut. $3 trillion. No, there was no, where are we going to get this money from? How are we going to bail out American Airlines? How are we going to give money to GSK and Johnson & Johnson and all these other vaccine makers? Trump was the one who really pushed this vaccine thing with all of his allocating of resources for these pharmaceutical companies and the airline industry and the cruise ship industry. Cruise ship industry got a lot of money out of this. Nobody questioned
For the very people who didn't want to quote unquote take the jab, not to realize that Trump was the one who actually pushed for that to happen in the first place. Unbelievable. And this is why I don't even bother arguing with people about this actual issue, because there's still an individual responsibility to make sure that you're not a threat to other people. But these people wanted the actual herd immunity without actually participating in the process itself. Yeah. That's what it is. They want the outcome without participation. And you have to understand that it's not coming to you and it's not your issue. So you get to dismiss it as long as it's not for you. But at the end of the day, it's always something else that needs to go on and happen. I'm like, the only thing you have to do is expand the Montgomery GI Bill to all Black people. Boom, problem solved.
Yep.
First time home program, money for actual college if you want to go to college. Make sure that they're not being ripped off by like these for-profit colleges, that they actually do walk away with an actual skill and some land. Problem solved. You don't even need to do anything else other than that. But they don't want to do anything. And then you have people on the quote unquote left who wants to run interference for the right. You know, these pro-blacks and whatnot, who have all these reparation rallies and all this kind of stuff, but they don't support the bills that are actually on the table. They don't support the efforts that are actually going on within their actual state. So it's both the left and the right who's actually running this sort of interference, grift, con game, running interference game on what's happening here. Because progress is very easy. You have to track down the ability to deliberately misunderstand the process at this point. And that's why they bring on these Black conservatives in a totally area, so that way he could gish gallop and troll his way through an actual serious ass conversation with no pushback. Now, if this was actual things, this video would be flagged as misinformation and this wouldn't even be on internet. But the right wing have so much money and there's so many dumbass people who want to believe in a specific point of view that it literally overpowers everything. And there's always another place for you to get this stuff off. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Politics. I'm not trying to call anybody names here. I want to understand, where's this money actually coming from? You see California, in San Francisco, didn't Dodgers go there recently? They're talking about giving people $5 million checks. How is this being funded?
Fundamentally, it's they want it to come from the tax dollars. And here's the thing: like, if you
we got a fucking debt ceiling. We can barely pay our own freaking bills.
But the states
for
can't do
$31
it.
trillion in debt.
Where
is this
Stop
money
thinking
coming
so
from?
small, Len.
yeah, so I want you to understand. I want you to understand.
Just a small thinker over here,
the
just trying to come up with
reasoning.
some trillions.
I want you to understand the reasoning behind what they do it, and how this also ties into sort of the anti-capitalism, anti-millionaire, billionaire rhetoric that they also try to push to leftists. Okay, so on one hand, they're going to say you are entitled to reparations because you're so Black and you're so oppressed, and the legacy of slavery and the trauma and all of that other stuff, and you're entitled to this money. You are not meant to think where the money is supposed to come from. Okay, it's obviously going to come from taxpayer dollars. It's obviously going to come from the federal.
Nothing to say about who was that in Mississippi who got caught with the the volleyball welfare scandal?
Brett Favre.
Yeah, Brett Favre. Nothing to say about that though. Ripped off all these poor people and the state itself. Nothing to say about that. And in the text messages exposed that he actually knew what he was doing. Nothing to say about that though. But you're so concerned about what San Francisco is doing, don't really live there, don't even contribute to the economy over there, but you're so worried about it, man. This is the highlight of Black male conservatives working with white conservatives, man, to stymie the progress of society. Black society on top of that.
Their actual job. Their job is to go there, walk up here. Like, you can replace him with Candace Owens, Thomas Sowell.
Yeah.
You can replace them with any other
Brandon
Black
Tatum.
conservative. Yeah, Brandon Tatum. It's the same point. It's a method actor.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. It's not even true. It's like, yeah, we're going to talk to our Blacks. This is what this is. They're Blacks. So come on there. What's the light-skinned dude? What's his 501c3, who ran a couple of campaigns? Young guy.
You're talking about, yeah.
Yeah,
He ran Vernon Jones's campaign, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, it's the same grift. It's the same grift. It's so crazy that people have not caught on to this yet. But they can listen to mumble rap. They can keep up with the relationship industry conversations. They can complain about a woman not wanting to date a bus driver. But when it comes to real issues, nothing.
But you know what? The other day, they were talking about the manosphere having this big impact, right? Oh, the manosphere is having this global impact. Here's the impact right here. Running interference on reparations.
Correct. And I mean, you can replace him with, three-letter capital riders who would go up there and say the exact same thing. You'll replace him with, a hood conservative, he would say the exact same thing. And it's like, Don't you get it that these people are not serious about these issues, but they want to talk about serious issues without any type of resolve to it? It's not hard. It's very easy to understand.
Unbelievable. Let's finish hearing what he has to say.
Federal government, right? But if you have a group of people that are so anti-capitalist, anti-millionaire, anti-billionaire, whatever, they're never really good. They're not thinking about tax. My ex-best friend was a total Bernie Sanders leftist. He was perfectly thrilled to just take taxpayer money. These are not the people that are going to be paying for that stuff, right? And so fundamentally, if you get these people to hate capitalism, hate millionaires, hate billionaires, and then say there's all this free money that's going to be coming to you because you're such a victim and vote for us and we'll do it, of course it's going to be tax dollars. But they're not thinking about the fact that this is literally their own money that they're going to be getting back.
I think they have to be very careful with this because do you know, when you look at numbers like this, do you know who the first slave owner was in America? Do you know the first ever slave owner in America? Do you actually know this?
It was a black man.
It was a black man. Wow. It was Anthony Johnson. If you just type in first Anthony Johnson.
So you should dismiss slavery because there was one guy. Okay.
And they had to Google it, right? They didn't actually cite any books that they read on history.
Nope, not at all.
Everything's ahistorical. It starts with Anthony Johnson. History starts with Anthony Johnson, but the 1776 project must go forward, though. You can't make this up.
Man, imagine if Kobe Bryant would have lived to see this guy make this type of turn into this type of guy. It's crazy.
AB Media 83 in the chat room says, and y'all not running interference for the left right now. Okay, but we're not arguing against reparations. It's black male conservatives that are running, who are running interference against reparations. Okay, so when people want to say the left isn't giving reparations, Jim Clyburn, Maxine Waters, VP Harris, Congressional Black Caucus. No, it's not them. It's this guy right here. Okay, it's black male conservatives like him, Brandon Tatum. Name your Project 21. All of these guys are against reparations. Okay, and they're black male conservatives, and they came out of this space. Okay, they're all black manosphere conservatives. All that quote unquote FlatBlackness that you hear on those other channels with three-letter guys and whatnot. Yeah, that there goes your FlatBlackness right there. SBE, conservative SBE. That's what this is, okay? Conservative SBE. Shame, blame, and explain not to give reparations to black people while they collect the check for themselves and worry about a debt ceiling that they can't even explain to their own audience.
And the other thing is most of these conservatives also take money from the federal government and turn around and act like there's not a problem with it. Sean Hannity takes millions of dollars. Yep, PPP loans, the actual EIDL. Sean Hannity takes a lot of money from the government, from HUD. It's like, dude, listen, pay attention to where the money's coming from. If it's not being spent on people, it's being spent on tax cuts. So what they're trying to do is shift the argument toward corporate profits and tax cuts versus programs for people, because those are the only two things that is going on there. But see, people trying to maintain their neutrality so that way they can have somebody else do the work for them when the only thing they have to do is just understand the actual issue and move forward. Not hard.
Yeah. I want to skip over to this. I'm tired of hearing this guy talk. Black male conservatives make my my skin crawl. But this is from the Senate.gov. Okay, this is policy that happened during Civil War. I'm gonna read it for you. DC Compensated Emancipation Act. On April 16th, 1862, the District of Columbia Compensated Emancipation Act became law. Originally sponsored by Senator Henry Wilson of Massachusetts, the act freed slaves in the District of Columbia and compensated owners up to $300 for each free person. In the months following the enactment of the law, commissioners approved more than 930 petitions, granting freedom to 2,989 former slaves. Okay. DC Emancipation Act. So let's take that into today's money. $300 for each slave. Okay. Let me do the math real quick. Without inflation, it's about $10,000 in today's money. Okay. Now you aggregate that across, the 2,989 slaves that are on the docket, then you're talking some few $1 million. Okay. Whether it's $10,000 or a few $1 million, reparations is reparations. It's a just due. This is enacted in the Senate. Henry Wilson of Massachusetts. This was never followed through because your sycophants decided that this was not going to go through. But the slave owners were compensated. But see, these guys, on PBD's podcast didn't want to touch this. Know why they don't want to touch it? Because it exposes the truth. Reparation for white people, good. Reparation for black people, bad. Therefore, no reparations. Where are we going to get the money from? Well, where did they get the money from back then? The war had destroyed the Confederate South. They seemed to have enough money back then to compensate the slave owners. How come they didn't have enough money to compensate the freed slaves? What's going on, Renaissance man?
Hey, what's up, Mike? What's up, MOT?
Chilling, bro. What do you have on this?
I just don't get. I just don't get what bringing up the first black person, the first slave owner being black, has anything to do with reparations for slavery. No one ever made the claim that all white people were slave owners. So, what does it have to do with anything that the first slave owner was black? I mean, once again, it was still an institution that enslaved a group of people. You have a lot of people who are basically pushing for lineage based anyway, saying, hey, if you can prove that your history goes back to slavery, you're entitled. So I mean, if that's the case, then okay, we'll prove it back, and that one black slave owner or whoever can just not get reparations. It's well, what does that? How does that disprove the claim in any other way? We know full well that he was an outlier. Coupled with, this is where conservatives like to pull a sleight of hand of, slavery was in Africa. Yeah, slavery is all over the world, but it was nothing. It was not chattel slavery. People were not enslaved for the rest of their lives. So
it wasn't institutionalized. It was not institutionalized. That's the big difference.
Family couldn't be sold.
Sanctioned.
Family could not be sold. You had some recognition of your rights as a human being. So,
here comes the SBE, right? Let me let Man of Tomorrow in. AB Media 83 says, because they needed you to work. Slavery made up 70 to 80% of the GPT back then. That's why they did Jim Crow and sharecropping. Do you have anything on that, Renaissance man?
But I don't see what is he trying to. What's he saying in response? Is he trying to say that that's why slavery existed, because of the need for labor? Is that his argument? Am I reading that correctly?
I think that's what he's saying, that, because they needed you to work. This is coming from AB Media 83, black male conservative. Because they needed you to work, slavery made up 70 to 80% of GPT.
Chat GPT.
That's why they did Jim Crow and sharecropping. So the rationale here is that don't compensate people who were enslaved with reparations because they needed you to work. But we just went over, the policy was there. The policy was there. It's not that, yeah.
No,
it was twofold.
No, Mike, I guess you and me, if our employers need us to work, I guess they shouldn't be paying us, under this logic here. So you need labor. Okay.
You shouldn't put, Microsoft Teams on your phone or Slack, because they need you to work. They need to have access to you. So therefore, you don't get paid after hours.
Yeah. or at all. Like,
Mhm.
okay, like if you need labor, you do what people do. You actually pay people. Yeah, you actually pay people. This wasn't about they just needed labor. These people wanted to get wealthy. That's why the South was one of the wealthiest areas in the world at the time. So it wasn't just about
Mississippi was one of the wealthiest states.
yeah,
Not one of, it was the wealthiest state.
exactly.
And they haven't really recovered from that. And another thing that people don't get, I know you've already made this point, but it was a twofold thing.
Mhm.
They got reparated for the loss of slaves, and they was able to get these people to sharecrop. So they was paid twice. Yes, they got 2 cents of reparations for a while. So it's like, okay, so you got Reconstruction that happened. All the people who had the skills was able to participate in the process because the National Guard ran the actual elections. Most people was mad as hell. And then after that, you had the shutdown of the actual process of Reconstruction. And then you have like that's when most of the reparation type laws kind of came in. The first thing that they did was reparate those people and economically depress those actual people who used to participate in the process. It was a twofold thing, right?
Mhm.
And these people think that there is no consequences for the lack of social mobility, upward mobility that would happen as a result, but refusing to recognize that these people got reparated twice. Not just once, but twice. And now they don't
Homes
even want to pay
rebuilt,
for the
land taken.
Yeah, it's crazy. But they get
me-
to bring on these method actors in order to run all this interference from you when you could just learn and understand the actual history behind it, which is pretty simple.
Yeah. Let me read this from UConn, University of Connecticut. Thomas Kramer, Associate Professor of Public Policy, PhD at large. There was a time reparations were actually paid out, just not to formerly enslaved people. The payments went to former slave owners and their descendants, not the enslaved or their legal heirs. Let's go over this real quick. The cost of slavery and its legacy of systemic racism to generations of Black Americans has been clear over the past year, seen in both racial disparities of the pandemic and widespread protests over police brutality. Yet, whenever calls for reparations are made, as they are again now, opponents counter that it would be unfair to saddle a debt on those not personally responsible. In the words of the then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, speaking on Juneteenth, the day Black Americans celebrate as marking emancipation in 2019, I don't think reparations for something that happened 150 years ago, for whom none of us currently living are responsible, is a good idea. As a professor of public policy who has studied reparations, I acknowledge that the figures involved are large. I conservatively estimate the losses from unpaid wages and lost inheritances to Black descendants of the enslaved at around $20 trillion in 2021. But what often gets forgotten by those who oppose reparations is that payouts for slavery have been made before, numerous times, in fact. A few at the time complained that it was unfair to saddle generations of people with debt for which they were not personally responsible. There's an important caveat in these cases for reparations, though. The payments went to former slave owners and their descendants, not enslaved or legal heirs. Extort in Haiti. A prominent example is the so-called Haitian independence debt that saddled revolutionary Haiti with reparation payments to former slave owners in France. Haiti declared independence from France in 1804, but the former colonial power refused to acknowledge the fact for another 20 years. Then in 1825, King Charles X decreed that he would recognize independence, but at a cost. The price tag would be 150 million francs, more than 10 years of the Haitian government's entire revenue. The money, the French said, was needed to compensate former slave owners for the loss of what was deemed their property. By 1883, Haiti had paid off some 90 million francs in reparations, but to finance such huge payments, Haiti had to borrow 166 billion francs with the French banks Guadeloupe loan interest and fees added to the overall sum over to France. The payments ran for a total of 122 years from 1825 to 1947, with the money going to more than 7,900 former slave owners and their descendants in France. By the time payments ended, none of the original enslaved or enslavers were still alive. British reparations. French slave owners weren't the only ones to receive payment for lost revenue. Their British counterparts did too, but this time from their own government. The British government paid reparations totaling 20 million pounds, equivalent to some 300 billion pounds in 2018, to slave owners when it abolished slavery in 1833. Banking magnates Nathan Mayer Rothschild and his brother-in-law, Moses Montefiore, arranged for a loan to the government for of $15 million to cover the vast sum, which represented almost half of the UK's government's annual expenditure. In the United States, reparations to slave owners in Washington, D.C. were paid at the height of the Civil War. On April 16th, 1862, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Act for the Release of Certain Persons Held to Service or Labor within the District of Columbia, which is what we just read on the Senate's website, into law. It gave former slave owners $300 per enslaved person set free. More than 3,100 enslaved people saw their freedom paid for in this way, for a total cost in excess of $930,000, almost $25 million in today's money. In contrast, the formerly enslaved received nothing if they decided to stay in the United States. The act provided for an immigration incentive of $100 in around $2,683 in 2021 dollars if the former enslaved agreed to permanently leave the United States. Similar examples of reparations going to individual slave owners can be found in the records of countries including Denmark, the Netherlands, and Sweden, as well as Argentina, Colombia, Paraguay, Venezuela, Peru, and Brazil. The French government even set an example of how the government can conduct genealogical research to determine eligible recipients. It compiled a massive 6-volume compendium in 1828 listing some 7,900 original slave owners in Saint-Domingue and their French descendants. Blessed with the detailed U.S. Census records and local archives, I believe the government could do the same for Black descendants of enslaved Americans. In the 1860 census, the last one before the Civil War, the government counted 3,853,760 enslaved people in the United States. Their direct descendants live among close to 50 million Black residents in the United States today. Using historic census records to estimate the number of man, woman, and child hours available to slave owners from 1776 to 1860, I estimated how much money the enslaved lost considered the meager wages for unskilled labor at the time, which ranged from 2 cents in 1790 to 8 cents in 1860. At a very moderate interest rate of 3%, I arrived at an estimate of $20.3 trillion in 2021 dollars for the total losses to Black descendants of enslaved Americans living today. It's a huge sum, roughly 1 year's worth of the US GDP, but a figure that would be comfortably close the racial wealth gap. The difference is, in contrast to historical precedents, this time the benefits would go to the Black descendants of the enslaved, not to the enslavers and their offspring. So why didn't Patrick David and Rob Smith bring this up? Because it contradicts their whole entire perspective, okay? This is what you have to deal with. You have to go through the history. Okay. Actually, let me pull up Pew Research. All right. This is from Pew Research Center. This is 6 months ago. Black and white Americans are far apart in their ways, in their views of reparations for slavery. Discussions about atonement for the enslavement of Black Americans have a long history in the United States, and efforts towards reparations for slavery and racial discrimination have moved forward in some places in recent years. In 2021, Evanston, Illinois became the first U.S. city to create a reparations plan for its Black residents. In California that year, set up the nation's first state-level reparations task force. Earlier this year, Harvard University created a $100 million legacy of slavery fund to allow scholars and students to examine the university's connections to slavery. Americans view the prospect of reparations mostly negatively. A 2021 Pew Research Center survey found 3 in 10 U.S. adults say descendants of people enslaved in the U.S. should be repaid in some way, such as given land or money. About 7 in 10 say the descendants should not be repaid. Okay, out of the 7 to 10 you just saw on my screen. Views for reparations for slavery vary widely by race and ethnicity, especially between Black and white Americans. Around 3/4 of Black adults say the descendants of people enslaved in the U.S. should be repaid in some way, while 18% of white Americans say the same. So much for ChatGPT advocating for Black men and boys and hoping to get them to the promised land, like the famous 3-letter guy said the other day, okay? There are also notable differences by partisan affiliation. Among Democrats and Democrat-leaning independents, views are split. 48% say descendants of enslaved people should be repaid in some way, while 49% say they shouldn't be repaid. By comparison, only 8% of Republicans and GOP leaners say these descendants should be repaid in some way, and 91% say they should not. Now, I want to highlight this because you have folks in this space with 17-point agendas who want to talk about, you know, we should vote to the right. We should give DeSantis a chance, or Trump a chance, or, you know, some of these other jokers a chance because, you know, Democrats ain't doing anything. Well, according to the survey, that's completely opposite, right? And it's only Democrats who are pushing the legislation. It's not actually Republicans. So how can you actually sit up here and say that working with the conservative party, which is the Republican Party, that would actually give you some kind of leverage? How can they give you leverage if only if 91% of them say you should not receive reparations, including Mitch McConnell, who's the majority whip? How do you explain that? I'm not going to go too far into this, but it will be in the description of the video. I think that it's important that we have a clear understanding that all of this flat blackness that you hear in this space, you know, from these guys who want to talk about Kamala Harris and the left and, you know, all of this, these new terms in this space, these 2.0 terms, all of it really is, to me, is conservative SBE. Shame, blame, and explain. You don't deserve reparations, and you know, voting to the left actually gets you nothing. In reality, in reality, that's not true. We know that's not true. We could tell by the policies. We know that the Congressional Black Caucus were the ones who actually pushed for HR 40. So for anybody who's confused about that, please come up on the panel. We can set you straight.
Okay, so they have a lot of sympathy for ADOSOs, but they have no actual sympathy for people of ADOS. American descendants of slave owners. That's what I mean by ADOSOs.
Yep.
They got reparations, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you protected yourself from the actual history by not knowing it. Therefore, you were supporting them actually being reparated. The other people, but not your people. Like, dude, you can't make this stuff up. And it's a high degree of black male cowardice that actually keep this stuff going. Like not learning
Absolutely.
the history, not knowing what's going on, pretending to be ahistorical, like it's some type of position point that you should actually be a part of. Oh well, you know what? We'll just hold. Well, you know what? We'll just hurt the left by not learning history. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, links in the chat, AB Media 83, if you want to come up.
Sure.
Yeah, any black male conservative who considers himself an actual conservative, come up on the panel and defend these points. I wonder if Renaissance Man is still here.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I had to take a call.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, no,
you know,
no,
we're talking history and actual policy, so they can't be a part of this conversation unless black women are part of the conversation exclusively. So that's how come they can't come up.
So
Yeah.
you get Nicki Minaj up here, and guys will be breaking the link. The Zoom link will be broken from all the traffic.
Yeah, man, you have
Crash
30
the-
people in queue.
Crash
30
the
people in
Zoom
queue
meeting.
trying to get up here.
You know, what's interesting is that when it comes to Ukraine, they don't actually complain about how much money is being sent to Ukraine, right? They don't
Nope.
complain about how much money is being sent to the state occupying Palestinians. They don't have any problem with that. They get $40 billion. They get, Ukraine gets billions and billions of dollars in the last, 9 months or so, last year or so, and nobody complains about that. Only when it's about reparations for black people, and it's only coming out of the mouth of black male conservatives. Okay.
It's not just reparations, it's anything for people, period. It's when the government's broke. But when it comes time to give money to the military industrial complex, hey man, look, we got tons of money. Except for when it comes to trying to help actual people with it. It's the same thing,
Yeah.
man. It's really not that hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. The whole reparations thing is a wedge issue for a lot of these people. Like when I
But
bump
why
into them,
why is it a wedge issue though? Why is it a wedge issue?
it's basically a way for you to not hold another side accountable. Basically, if you can sit up here and talk about reparations and Democrats, put up videos like showing where Jim Clyburn's saying, hey, it's not going to happen because you don't have the votes. And then people, twisting words around, if you do all that, you really don't have to deal with the fact that the other party has outright blatantly said they're against it. And really you can you can suppress the black vote, which I think some of these people are really trying to do. These people are not serious. None of these people show up at hearings. You don't see them in doing any of the legwork towards what would actually need to be done from a lobbying standpoint. You just hear them talking about, oh, we need to vote these we need to not vote. They don't even say, hey, we need to put pro reparations candidates on the ballot. They don't even say that. They just say, oh, we don't need to vote. I mean, this is the political ignorance of these people.
And nothing to say about Daniel Cameron in Kentucky, not being endorsed by Trump or any of these other conservative candidates.
By name. Won't even mention
Yeah,
his
by name. Yeah. Put some respect on his name? Absolutely not, says the conservatives. So what are we talking about here? Like, I don't get it. I don't get what the black manosphere has this infatuation with this conservative ideal. Like I said earlier, the thumbnail was really based on this idea that Kamala Harris, the VP, becoming president in 2024 or 2028 or something like that. And and the gentleman said, if that was to happen, I would leave the country. So you wouldn't leave the country over, black folks being killed in Buffalo and doing grocery shopping on a Saturday. You wouldn't leave the country over black people being killed in the church at Mother Emanuel's Church in South Carolina. But you would leave the country, over a black woman becoming the president. I mean, just think about how, and these are black men. These are not like trolls or anything like that. These are actual black men with wrenches in the space.
Would they leave the country if DeSantis became president? If you look at what he's trying to do in Florida, creating a fund to recruit police officers have a violent history, getting rid of African American studies, AP courses and studies in general in school. I mean,
You kind of run a nationwide campaign on it, man. It's kind of like Bull Connor running for national office after the civil rights thing, man. Like, bro, you're not gonna get elected, man. What are you doing?
Trying to out Trump. That's what you see from all these. You see it from DeSantis, and then you see it from other non-white conservatives. They double and triple down and try to go even further. Where it was, the guy in Michigan who was running, who was saying he was going to cancel Black History Month.
John James.
No. This was Austin Chang. This is I think he's run for governor or senator, one of the two. Yeah, he did this a couple years ago. He lost. No, John James actually won. John James, despite being a conservative, he tried to distance himself from Trump. He didn't try to go full on MAGA hat, like Burgess Owens or like Byron Donalds, people like that, or even like Mark Robinson. Mark Robinson sitting up here talking about, a lot of rights were lost during the civil rights movement. Really, dude? Like you're talking like you lost some rights in that time. Like someone who's like if you were alive in that time period, you would have actually been worse off after the civil rights. It's like it's pandering to the extreme.
But you never hear these black male conservatives or these manosphere conservatives talking about Reagan and the Muller Act, right? Taking away, the right to bear arms, from black men, right? They never seem to, talk about that, but they seem to lament about how, Reaganomics was great for the black community. And, what planet are you from, man?
No, I actually did a book discussion recently and we were talking about Reagan in his term. And when you really go down the list of how much America is screwed up today, because of Reagan, I mean, you've got deregulation, firing of the air traffic controllers union, even though he was part of the union, that's sort of leading the charge for the end of for declining unionism around the country, repeal of the fairness doctrine, and that essentially enabling the rise of Fox News, deregulation of the financial industry, which they think basically caused the savings and loans crisis, about 5 or 6 years later, foreign policy, embracing Iran-Contra and embracing I believe the Sandinistas, arming them, drugs coming into the black community, AIDS crisis. I mean, it's just so much for someone black to just sit up here and dismiss, Reagan like, it was no big deal, even though, this is the guy who all conservatives up until Trump really were sitting back, saying is, the hallmark of conservatism. And the funny thing was, I even heard a story that his HUD director was the only black person in the administration. He didn't even recognize the guy. Like, it's like, you don't even recognize the one black officials in your cabinet. Like he didn't really know what the guy was at like a press meeting or something like that. I mean, this is who we're dealing with here.
Yeah. Let me play this clip real quick, because I think that it's actually relevant, in regards when we're talking about the conservatives in their law and order mantra.
It appears a man intentionally crashed a 26-foot rental truck into a barricade about 100 yards from the White House fence last night. Nicole D'Antonio has the video.
Outside the White House Tuesday, police tape marked the scene of last night's security incident. Social media footage shows the moment a driver tried to ram a rental truck past the barrier at Lafayette Square, about a block from the White House fence.
In this particular case, what was supposed to have happened or been prevented is what occurred.
A U.S. law enforcement official tells CBS News there were no explosives in the vehicle and no weapons, and there were no reported injuries to anybody in the Secret Service or the White House.
The president was indeed briefed. He was briefed this morning. He's relieved that no one was injured last night.
Video of the aftermath appears to show officers collecting evidence, including a Nazi flag. The U.S. Park Police identified the suspect as a 19-year-old U.S. citizen from Chesterfield, Missouri. A law enforcement official tells CBS News the driver flew to D.C. from Missouri Monday, rented the truck at the airport, and drove here to the White House. Multiple law enforcement sources said the suspect appeared to be emotionally disturbed. Among the charges he's facing, assault with a dangerous weapon, reckless operation of a motor vehicle, and threatening to kill, kidnap, inflict harm on a president, vice president, or family member. Nicole D'Antonio, CBS News, the White House.
Now, a lot of guys in the manosphere want to go on that side. I mean, for what reason, I have no idea. Nazi flags, all types of insignias, shooters in Allen, Texas with all sorts of tattoos on them. Why do you guys think that going over there is going to get you anything? You're not going to get, 17-point agendas passed over there. You're not going to be able to get, you're not going to be able to get 50-50 child support or abolishment of child support altogether. It doesn't make any sense. But these guys have hijacked this social space in order to push this agenda. Okay. You want to talk about FlatBlackness? There's your FlatBlackness. Okay. This amalgamation of ignorance and chat room babble amongst Black men, where they can actually be against Black women being, whether they're in office or is BLM, but you want to bring these same women back to a proverbial table to have a conversation with them about what? I have no idea. All it is, it's conservative SBE. It's all SBE. All of these guys are SBE, and there's no way to get around SBE.
Yeah, it's what they don't understand is when you claim FlatBlackness, you're just saying that you're part of the problem, or you're exclusively the problem, and your lack of historical knowledge make you a threat to everybody around you. Not only Black, but white as well, because the only thing these people had to do was just solve all the problems in the Black community in rural America. America would be better off, but they can't even get to the starting line of even understanding the issue, let alone the history. And we have to keep being held hostage by AM talk radio people, and these people who are just as ignorant as the AM talk radio people who are
Yep.
Black. So that's just where we're at. I mean, there's two sides of the same coin. And if you listen to them long enough, they actually sound the same.
No, they are MOT, because here's the thing. When you look at the whole infatuation with Ice Cube, there's actually data that shows this. Conservatives, you'll hear a lot of them to it, like white conservatives. They will vote on a candidate based on something like, oh, who I'd like to have a beer with, not like their policies, their issues, any of that. That's how they'll go and vote. That's how you get someone like Reagan, Bush, Trump. That's the mentality of these people. And you can see that same thing on the other side. That's why these people, are going crazy that, oh, Ice Cube put out a plan, or, Kanye went to the White House, Jim Brown went to the White House, like rest in peace, Jim Brown. That's where a lot of this comes from. So you're exactly right. It's people who don't care about the process, don't care to know about it. And, it's just manifesting itself on a Black side, or they'll just go and try to, outdo the white conservatives themselves. Because you see it with their you see it with the complete disregard with DeSantis and these people on any sort of issue around basically policy and procedure, whether it be, not caring about equal rights or equal protection under the law, not really caring about, claiming to be physically conservative, and then, not caring about all the payouts that are going to come from police brutality, all these other things. They're the same people, they're just on the other side of it.
Yeah. And I mean, like, this stuff didn't just come up yesterday. It's a compounding, it's a compound fracture of ignorance. It's like a lasagna. You have like layers of ignorance on top of one another that just keep piling up, that could be easily solved by just understanding the actual issue and just minimally participating in the process. But they want to hold everybody else hostage by deliberately not participating. And these people are a threat and a danger to society, and they always have been.
Yeah. I mean, for all the defending of conservatism, ideals, and whatnot, that we've heard over the last 7 days, how come these guys are not coming up here?
I mean, because they're so used to trying to just balkanize the space around the most ignorant people possible. That's why they always want to point to popularity rather than progress, because they want the numbers of people they can easily mislead to be the barometer of actual Black male progress. Look at how many people I can mislead by talking about the relationship industry complex. Look at how many people I can mislead by claiming like I care about the outcomes of quote unquote our women, when these people don't even know that possessive pronouns actually have an actual definition that does not apply to you. Like, the women are not claiming you how you trying to claim them. Are you cosplaying as if they're at the table, but they're not at the table. They are enjoying the freedoms that you refuse to actually engage in. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Can't make this up. I mean, I could replay, keeping in the helmet. I would play his, his content, but I think we've made our point. But the thing here is, from this point forward, I don't think that anybody should be actually using this term flat blackness in this space at all. The manosphere has always been a conglomerate of people of the diaspora. This ADOS term only came into existence because of a legitimate woman in her microphone, right? If all the anti-legitimate talk that you hear in this space, you don't hear any of these guys actually talking about the founders of this, this acronym being a part of that movement themselves, okay, or living that lifestyle themselves.
or nobody makes them elaborate. So I'm curious, like, if you're Black and you got a parent that came from, the Caribbean or, the continent, and they get married to someone, who is Black and grew up in America. I mean, are you ADOS? Are you not ADOS? Like, it's just stuff that doesn't really make sense when you look at it.
Chattel slavery was exported from the United States too.
Oh yeah.
Right? If you read Gerald Horne's book, even covers this, the counter-revolution of 1836.
I
mean,
when you look at the Caribbean and you look at the sugar plantations, I mean, some of those were so harsh that they couldn't even people couldn't even reproduce. That they had to import slaves from the continent because the conditions were so harsh that, like I said, you couldn't have like even the reproduction of slaves like you had in the States. So like, and you take into account, more slaves went to Brazil than anywhere else in the transatlantic slave trade. I'm just like, okay, so, because these people, didn't get dropped off in America, there's somehow some big difference between us. When in the grand scheme of things too, I believe it's something like 70-80% of all slaves in transatlantic slave trade came from like Nigeria. So
yeah, I mean most of West Africa. Yeah, but the thing here is, they think that they're superior to these other people outside of the United States. That being born on this soil gives you some kind of superiority over other slaves. That it doesn't make any sense at all, because without the Haitian Revolution, without the African slaves overthrowing their French colonial masters, you would not have a United States. You would not have the Louisiana Purchase. You would not have the westward expansion. You wouldn't have all these things without everybody else participating, in the liberation of anti-slave revolts and movements. I don't get this whole entire desire to hold on to this four-letter term created by the same legitimate people that they don't even like. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, what are you holding on to? Because there's no real, I don't see any way to manifest it, right? There's no way to really manifest what you're trying to hold on to. And you didn't even come up with it for yourself. It's somebody else's stuff, right? And you're just holding on to it like a football, and it's like, you're out of bounds, right?
Well,
the whistle's been blown.
Well, the other thing too that they don't even realize is the reason why you don't even learn about the Haitian Revolution growing up is because, these guys today may see it as like, oh, just something that didn't mean anything. But, slaveholders at that time were terrified of that. And they really did not want any ideas being put in anyone's head about, really just, violent overthrow of slave masters. That you can go back and look in history. That really shook up a lot of people in the slaveholding class when that happened, because they thought, hey, it's the next logical step is these people going to see it over there, see what happened there, and do it to us. So, while you may try to put this false division in place, people who were looking to maintain the institution definitely saw it as relevant and definitely saw it as related. So it doesn't even make sense from that angle.
No, it's all because you can't say now that, oh, well, I'm ADOS, I'm ADOS, right? And then what were you before that? What were you before that? Yeah,
Mike, I disagree. I want those people to keep using the term FlatBlackness so that way they can keep highlighting themselves as a non-participator in actual society. These are the actual people who want to hold back all collective progress because they want to support the ADOSOs. They want to support the American descendant of slave owners. That's what they want to do. They want to maintain their power and control by not participating in the process and gathering their own power. So they are the ADOSOs.
Yeah.
But by default, that's where they're at.
Yeah, I guess
what is an ADOSO?
American descendant of slave owners.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess the ADOSOs and the ADOS have more in common. If you let these people tell it, then ADOS and someone from the Caribbean or someone from the continent. That's really the argument these people are making here. It doesn't make much sense.
And you don't center it, in present day. You go back to the beginning. Any sort of restorative justice initiative, you always go to the beginning. How did you even get here in the first place? And so these guys don't want to do that. They think that they can separate, reparations in America from the Caribbean and Africa going back to the Europeans and whatnot. If everybody went to the source of the problem together, then you would get more traction. I don't think these people really understand that. Jamaica, Barbados, Haiti, all of these people going back to their former colonial masters, for reparations, makes a lot of sense all at the same time, especially at places like the United Nations where you can embarrass people, who are in power at these places. If you all go there collectively, then you might get more traction than actually isolating yourself to StreamYards and lonely social mail spaces like the Black Manosphere.
I mean, but it's great at building an individual persona based off of these issues. It's way easier to do that. It's way easier to build an individual persona based off of concern trolling these people around these issues. The true work of getting this stuff done is much harder. It takes a lot of work, and it's kind of like it's predetermined for people to be screwed over around these type of issues because they gravitate toward those larger voices of people who do nothing but stir the pot, point direction at this point, and lead you over in this corner and lead you over in that corner, and that's all it is. It's crazy. So, and when nobody points it out, and even when you do, you're stopping the economic advancement of a grifter. So therefore, you're a hater, and it's like, how is anything supposed to get done? What's their actual process? If we can understand, we can explain our progress of how we get there, but they don't have a process to which they're following to get anywhere. And this is why they can't jump up on the panel, because when it comes for them not being able to just lay down their actual regurgitated talking points, they're completely lost. Completely lost.
Before you know it, Jack Harlow will be a part of the the ADOS movement too. Oh man. No one's coming up right now.
Harlan Crow.
Go ahead.
Harlan Crow. Clarence Thomas. Where's this going?
Yeah. Let me put the link in the chat one more time. One more game.
And this is how you get people who are on the left and who are on the right who are running the same type of grift on these people. Running this fake conservative, fake liberal, fake pro-black, fake representation. Oh, well, you know what? All these laws are changing this because of the Black Manosphere. Like, okay, don't nobody in the Black Manosphere live in one of those states. There's no body who's cited for this. And even if things were to pass in that state, you don't even have your economics together to move to that actual state. So it's like actions happening anywhere is the Black Manosphere's fault, no matter what it is. All right,
Yeah.
man, okay.
Well, Mike, I think also you got to look at the divide within the conservatives too. You got some conservatives who just say, "Oh, I'm conservative because I want reparations," and you kind of look like, okay. And then you got people like, I guess it was AV Media who was saying, I guess he's anti-reparations because he was bringing up the first slaveholder being Black and then talking about, they needed labor. So,
Completely radicalized, completely ahistorical. He's still trying to work with an abacus while we're using calculators. Man. All right, man. Just be slow, my friend. Just be slow, man. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a wild take. Well, slavery happened because they needed labor, so that makes it okay. That's a pretty wild take from the manosphere.
Yeah. Who's going to do the work? You want the white people to do the work? Absolutely not. Right? Get your ass on the plantation.
And I don't know if you remember, there was actually a video that leaked from this warden in Louisiana, several years back. And they were talking about, I think it may have been during COVID or with Trump, when they had the whole discussion with Democrats and Republicans and Trump on criminal justice reform. I think they literally had a warden in a prison saying something to the extent of, if we have criminal justice reform, who's going to wash our cars and, cut our lawns and stuff like that. That's the mentality of some of these people. And it's wild to hear a Black person repeating that.
Completely radicalized, man. Like MOT said, completely radicalized. A lot of these guys have trickled into the space under the guise that they're going to somehow squeeze people like us out. Going to get rid of all the truth and facts and historical citations in order to replace it with gish galloping and just memes like Roy Smith said earlier. Haven't you seen the memes of Kamala Harris? That's the highlight of your talking point is a meme. Really?
Kamala's the cock. Oh
yeah.
My God. It's always something else stupid and simple to run behind or say or anything else. It's ridiculous.
I mean, what does a meme of Kamala Harris have to do with anything? I mean,
because trolling to them, man, that's like a part of their it's kind of like, let's go Brandon, right? These sort of inside jokes that really in reality doesn't make any sense at all, man. It's just in order to be down with them, you got to be meme based, man. It has to be you have to get the meme and shit, man. It's kind of like the you have to put in multi-factor authentication, like they want you to what's the you have to figure out the puzzle, is this a traffic light or is this you have to figure it out.
No different than a private, click the checkbox mark. I am not a robot. I am a helmet.
It's kind of like it's kind of like the private stock cap. You take the cap off the bottle, man. There's a little puzzle under it. You got to figure it out. If you can figure it out, I guess good for you. I don't get it. But a lot of these Black men,
just like
a lot of these Black men.
Oh my God.
No, it's just that a lot of these guys in the space, man, are just bringing in these terms that really have no sort of relevance to the space at all. Soft boy era and flat blackness and
they are the soft boys. They are the ones who are flat black. That's why I would never take their terms away from them because they're just proving how radicalized they are. It's always some shorthand nonsense they have to go through. It's kind of like, if you look at documentaries and people who leave Scientology, like how they kind of talk about those issues within Scientology, but they're nowhere close to it, and people are looking around like, what is this person talking about?
But think about this, right? Because A Hill in the chat says something that I find is interesting. All the people Kamala incarcerated in California, then she joked about smoking weed. But let's think about this. When Donald Trump took out a full page description in the what was it, the New York Times or the New York Post about the Central Park Five?
Probably the Post. Oh, it was the Times. Oh, wow.
Post?
I thought it was the Post, but I could be wrong.
Post, sorry.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Yeah, I could be wrong about it, but no one has any smoke for that, right? Even though these guys were proven innocent, right? But these same black men have a problem with Kamala Harris and her law and order stance, right? Well, I thought you guys were all about law and order. Now you're concerned about the 94 crime bill.
Well, the other thing is, I think it's over exaggerated. My understanding is it doesn't really bear out data, one. And then two, when Kamala Harris was a prosecutor in California, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't that during Obama's presidency?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sitting here like, California was one of the first states that started, A Hill is talking about joking about smoking weed. California was one of the first states that when the Obama administration basically said, hey, we're not going to make marijuana a priority. Basically, now you're seeing ways of decriminalization. You still haven't seen it fully decriminalized at the federal level. But before all of that, the thing that opened the door for states to experiment was the Obama administration saying, essentially, we're not going to enforce this law. And, that's when states sort of opened the door to say, hey, we're going to legalize it. And you started having people, experiment with dispensaries and things like that. And then, you get Jeff Sessions coming in office who wants to, basically start prosecuting this stuff again under Trump. So, I mean, I don't see how Harris was this, did this in California, because I don't know many stories of Kamala Harris putting people in jail for smoking weed. So when she probably would have the discretion for it. If she
I would like to see the data on it. I would like to see the data on it, if anything else. Because a lot of them say it, but
so fast that ahistorical in nature. It's not meant to be factual. It's meant to be meme and troll based. It's not meant to come from a factual place. That's why Patrick Bet David would look pretty stupid talking about the reparations argument by himself. That's why you have to have a black conservative on doing this type of, song and dance that's really helping you have the conversation about something that you're wholly unqualified for both of y'all to actually talk about. Do you think they'll be able to get this stuff off if Dr. Carr was up there with him, with this guy? I mean, he probably break this dude in two on that same panel talking about the
or Ellie Mistal.
Oh, Ellie Mistal,
yeah.
She said, Hill said Kamala put mothers in jail for their children's truancy. I mean, the manosphere would love that. I mean, aren't they always talking about, holding women accountable and, how black boys are being underdeveloped? A very prominent voice in this space claims to be very interested in the education of black boys and says the women are the problem. They'd be celebrating that en masse. So I don't see what they're upset about. But in all seriousness, I've heard that narrative once again. Like I said, we got to dig into the data. But my initial look when I looked at it earlier was that, hey, some of this stuff is just exaggerated. It's media, it's social media chatter.
It's no different than Obamacare, being the branding of Affordable Care Act. This is hurting me, and I made $900, and that's a come up for me. I invested that. It's like, okay.
I made so much money under Trump. How? I made so much money under Trump. Oh, okay, all right.
Okay, here it comes now. Kamala is only black on occasion. She was inaugurated to the Senate as the first East Indian. Okay, that's misinformation. That's not true either.
Where'd you see that at?
Oh, A Hill just put it in the chat.
I think she deleted it. I don't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it. Oh, okay. Here it goes now.
Yeah, that's another talking point that's flying around social media. Oh, she only identified as black when she became vice president. She identified as Indian before. I'm like, nah, that doesn't make sense. Like,
Well, she's a part of the Congressional Black Caucus.
I mean, the woman went to Howard University and was an AKA in college. So I mean, I don't know how you get that as, oh, she identified as Indian.
What does her birth certificate say? That would tell you everything you need to know.
If you ask them, she's apparently identified as Indian. But like I said, when I looked into this as well too, because that was a talking point around the time she got appointed or got put on the ticket as VP. People were talking about, well, she identifies as Indian, not black, and all this time. I was like, someone did some digging and it wasn't holding up to the snuff test.
But why is there so much smoke for her, but nothing for like Jeff Sessions or Bill Barr or any of these any of these Anglo-Saxon men? I don't get it. I don't get.
I mean, but it's targeted aggression. Yeah. It's targeted aggression, and it's not even their points. They get these points off of AM talk radio or Fox News or somewhere else, and they just print it off the press. Don't even care about the historical relevance and just throw it out there. And they don't understand that we know where these things come from. You're not being all this type of, woke, but just throwing all these stuff out, these things out there. We know where the origin point of these things are.
Yeah. I mean, for all of the, okay, so who do you replace the VP with? Val Demings? I don't see anybody, in this space promoting her. I mean, who are you going to replace her with?
You see, taking action is a bridge too far. They're all about trying to derail the conversation with nonsense.
Yeah.
Unresearched nonsense.
Yeah, let me Renaissance just shared this link. Let me pull this up. Fact check. This is from Reuters. Fact check. Kamala Harris did not switch from identifying as Indian American to black. Senator Harris has long identified, let me zoom in on this. Senator Harris has long identified as both black and Indian. She recognizes both parents' heritage as part of her identity, and her Senate bio reads that she is the second African-American woman and first South Asian American senator in history. I don't know.
Yeah. If you read the next paragraph where she says, Harris details her mixed race identity and upbringing in her 2019 memoir, The Truths We Hold, describing how she and her younger sister Maya were raised with a strong awareness and appreciation for Indian culture, while her mother also understood very well that she was raising two black daughters and was determined to make sure they would grow into confident, proud black women. I don't see where people are getting this from. Her mother clearly, like it states, and like she said, she's identified, she recognizes both her Indian heritage, and her black heritage, which, I don't know why people are now, trying to make this into some non-issue. Like I said, when you look at the way she interacts with people, you look at where she went to school, what organization she's been a part of. It's very clear that she has a black experience and she identifies with it, versus,
trolling piece disrupt the conversation.
I was going to say it's all this smoke for this, but you have black men who are literally, talking about getting rid of Black History Month and talking about, they lost rights due to the civil rights movement, but we're sitting up here talking about the first Black female VP. It makes no sense if these people are so concerned with flat blackness, as they like to say.
And actually claiming about the one drop rule. I don't get it. Why hold on to the one drop rule and then try to get rid of her? What's the point of that? Who else are they going to get rid of? Harry Belafonte? We going to get rid of him too?
Spawn, the programmer, saying she pick and choose when it's in her benefit. That's not what any of the evidence is saying, but I need some examples of her picking and choosing when she identifies as Black. That doesn't make sense.
Should be easy to look up.
Look up what?
Should be easy to look up whenever she's picking and choosing. It should be easy to look up.
But that doesn't matter. I mean, a lot of biracial people or a lot of people who have varying backgrounds always seem to float in and out of different identities. I mean, that's pretty common. I mean, you have.
I mean, don't we? I mean, Mike. Yeah. I mean, if you look at, don't historically, haven't there been some people in Black America who have claimed that they had, not East Indian, but Indian as a Native American in their family? These people were still seen as Black. I'm just confused on, this idea that because you have a multiracial background and you actually acknowledge that, but still, very much identify with the Black experience, all of a sudden this is flat blackness.
Because they claim, Blackfeet as their tribe. And that gives them some kind of legitimacy, when they claim Native American. I don't, to me, all it is just a way of deflecting from an actual conversation of substance so that they don't actually have to, engage in any sort of real discourse, because arguing about whether or not Kamala Harris is going to be good for the country while you had Trump, for 4 years, who basically ran the country into the fucking ground. It doesn't make any sense. It's like they live in a completely different, in a very fanciful society in their heads, where everything was good 4 years ago before Biden and before Obama, Bush and everybody else is good for the country. It's a very dystopian sort of world that they live in. I don't know where they're coming from with this.
Yeah, Spawn is now saying she claims she was the first Indian first lady. Once again, we clearly just disproved that. I don't know where these people are getting the stuff from, other than the dark corners of the web or right wing radio. Like,
what is she a first lady of though? Was you saying before she came VP or after?
I think they're trying to say that in reference to VP. I wouldn't know how she would claim to be first Indian first lady, because that means like her husband would have to be the president of India, which does make sense.
I don't get these people, man. But there's so much emphasis put behind her. Nothing put behind the same people who are trying to stop you from getting your reparations. Notice that the conversation goes from reparations to that. Like, that is the most important aspect. But you have Black men in this space who were pushing only a month and a half ago ChatGPT. It wasn't that long ago. 6 weeks ago, these same guys, or some people in this space, content creators and all, and panelists, were pushing this idea that ChatGPT was going to be a big advocate for Black men and Black boys issues. And then when she did a live stream and threw these guys under the bus, then they came back and said, see, I knew she was going to do that. I predicted that she was going to do that. What the fuck? I don't get it, man. They kind of like I said, it's all it is. It's a way to deflect from actually having a conversation of substance, so that they don't actually have to talk about who's responsible for you not really getting your reparations that you claim that you're really fighting for, that you're so concerned about.
That's all it is.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't see anybody coming up here, man. Any last thoughts, Renaissance or MOT, before we get up out of here?
No, sir. Not for me. Just make sure you still subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the notification bell so that way you can get all the updates.
Yeah, and I'd quickly add to, people have to be more politically aware. This is, right now, this is a very politically contentious time. You see rights being trampled on or attempted to be trampled on from various candidates and various factions within the GOP. Now is not the time to be looking at, talking points that are coming out of social media or talk radio. People need to be focused on policy. We have right now you have Republicans basically holding the debt ceiling hostage right now. Any sort of default would be catastrophic for all Americans, catastrophic for Black folks as well, because we all know the saying, when America gets sick, Black America gets the flu. So, people need to focus on policy and really pay attention here and put down these divide and conquer talking points, which that's all they really serve, is to divide Black America, divide the Black community, Black diaspora in general, and really keep white supremacy at the forefront. So that's all I've got.
All right. Thank you all for joining. Please hit the like button on the way out. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the